I'm going to call to order the regular city council meeting for the city of Dunsmuir at 6:01 p.m. We will stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And whenever you're ready, we'll move to roll call. So roll call, Councilmember Deutsch. Here. Councilmember Bryan. Present. Councilmember Keisler. Here. Councilmember Arth is absent. And Mayor Lucchese. Present. Thank you. We'll now move into special presentations and announcement. And tonight we have a special presentation from Caltrans about the 800-foot bridge staging. So take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on the agenda tonight. My name is Carrie Waltz.
Microphone.
Is there?
My name is Carrie Maltz. I'm a project manager at Caltrans, and we want to introduce the Sacramento River Bridge and overhead deck replacement project to you tonight. There's a lot of aspects about this we'll talk about in the next coming years, but tonight we need to talk to you about the impacts that we're going to have to the park beneath it. So as a little overview, we have some poster boards here just as a reference. Our bridge, the top one there, it's the beautiful arch bridge built in 1955. We'll be replacing just the southbound deck on that one. The starting date is expected to be in 2022, so a couple years out. So right now we're just doing the preliminary design and environmental studies. So I did bring a team with me here today to help field questions as they come up in case I don't know everything. But basically our design sequence is what's going to happen is we'll be moving into the park to build a platform. And it'll take about 2 months to build this. At this time, access to the park will be restricted, but the park will remain open. Obviously, we cannot have pedestrians around where we have like cranes and other things lifting the platform up. We brought an example of platforms on other bridges for your reference too, to see what it looks like. Once the platform is up, we should be able to move out from under in the park. The park will be open again. There may be some limited restrictions throughout the summer in case there's like heavy lifting of equipment, and we just want to make sure it's all safe. The actual deck replacement will be from like April through November of the year that it's done. We're going to restrict how long the road can be closed, I-5 can be closed on the southbound side. And then when that deck is finished, we'll come back into the park, remove the platform, clean up, make everything pretty again, revegetate, put everything back to at least as good as it is now, and then be out of your hair for it. So what we need for the environmental process is your concurrence that we have what they call a de minimis impact to the park. And we found it to be de minimis because it's a temporary occupation and we will restore it back to the condition that we came to. I do have handouts. So in the handouts is a little summary of the project, the construction years. I have the photos from the poster board so you can look at it more closely. And then I also have a copy of the letter of concurrence that we'd like your city manager to sign. And then I also have a write-up on what the 4F de minimis is, on how we found it too.
Is this information going to be available online for people who want to look it up?
We can make it available online, yes.
I think that would be really nice for people who may not be getting this pamphlet tonight, and then in the future, if you're going to use it to stage your SEQA or NEPA documents, if people want to see those.
Would you like a copy of it for your website as well, for City of Dunsmuir?
I think that'd be useful, yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
I think as long as people are able to know where they can expect those documents to be posted in case they have additional questions or want to review those, I think either having something on Caltrans' website or communicating with us, a link would be really nice, because I think people will, as this gets closer and closer to the date, I think people will be very interested and have questions. I think it's going to be a much easier process to answer those ahead of time.
Okay. And then as far as the progress progresses, next October, we're expecting to have a public meeting to a workshop. It'll be open for everyone. We'll put announcements out. We'll put signs down in the park as well to let them know it's coming up and so we can get questions. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
2 questions. First of all, hi. And second of all, that's not a question, I guess. When we look at this, what is the next step in terms of north? I remember you mentioning one time when I was at the LTC that 25, is that when we're looking at actually doing the northbound?
It would be similar to, we're actually looking at combining this project with the northbound, so it would be probably starting the 22-23 year and then being completed in 25.
So we have basically 2 years of breathing room and then we're back into it again?
Yes.
Okay. The second thing I'd like to point out is I think it's kind of good timing that you're here now, because I was thinking as I was driving around the last few days that there isn't any construction per se really happening here. We never got a chance to say thank you and to John and everybody else for all the work that you've done, and finally getting us to the other end of what was for a while kind of a horrendous experience. And thank you all. If you pass it on to the rest of your people, I appreciate it.
I'll do that, thank you.
Do you have any other questions from council?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
do we know yet how this is expected to affect exits? Clearly one goes straight.
Yes, so the northbound, and if Sarah can help me with all the names of the exits, but the northbound on-ramp will be closed while we have traffic crossed over onto the northbound lanes. And then I don't believe the southbound needs to be closed, correct, Sarah?
No,
so
southbound
it's-
should be open for duration of construction.
Okay, for both sides? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the one ramp that will be closed. And that'll be just April through November.
And that's only the southbound ramp?
That's the northbound ramp, actually.
The northbound on-ramp will be closed for the duration of the second season in 2023
Of Dunsmuir Avenue, right?
of Dunsmuir Avenue, so they'll have to go through Dunsmuir Avenue through downtown. Correct.
Councilmember Kessler?
Ladies, thank you for coming tonight and making this presentation and making me aware of these things. At one point I see looking into the future that access where the traffic, general traffic will be going, we'll also be sharing the same access with the contractors and equipment at the same time for the small duration of the project? Is that what
From I-5, you mean, the
No, down
exits
below.
or down below? Yeah,
Yeah.
so the access will be this other side
Yeah.
over here. Yes, it'll be.
So that's a free
shared
fall, everybody's going that way for a minute.
For, as we build the platform, yeah. So there'll be an impact as we mobilize in, and then as they build the platform, they'll be able to increase traffic. But once the platform is up, everything will be up top.
Okay, that's really no, that's why I'm concerned. So when you say that you guys are leaving Tullamore Valley, you're coming in, you're doing your thing, and then you're leaving it as good as it is now.
Yes.
You know, you could always build us some handicap bathrooms down there, that'd be kind of cool, you are town trying. Look, I'm trying, anyway, give me credit. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more question. How are you guys going to prevent people from kayaking or tubing down the river directly into the bridge during that time you're putting the deck?
Platform up.
We don't have any restrictions that we're expecting for the river. We don't expect material to be falling into the river, so.
But as the platform's going up.
As the platform is going up, we'll have to have the equipment underneath near the river, and during that time, which would be around a month in duration, there'll be limited access to the beach down there. So if anybody is planning to go in the water at that location, they'll have to take the walking path down to the next nearest location to access the river.
And
But
usually,
that may be something that we have to
they would be
consider.
coming in on you from above.
Yeah.
So what we've done up on the Klamath River Bridge, where we're building a barge bridge, we actually have, like when we're going to go across the river, we'll have a spotter upstream, and when we're placing, say we're placing forms or something over, we would have a spotter to stop the river traffic and pull them to the side. We'll post them at any of the places where they can put their rafts or whatever coming down the river, any of the places they can put them in the river, we'll have it posted, we'll advertise it, we'll do things like that, just to keep it safe.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions? Councilmember Art, any questions?
Well, my only question is, looking at the memorandum, it says that the bridge was built in 1955 and is not considered eligible to the National Register of Historic Places. It's a beautiful bridge.
It is.
It has architectural features that I think are a sense of pride in the community. Is it simply too new, or what is the disqualifying factor?
Age, yeah, I guess it's too new. We aren't changing the arch though. We're only replacing the deck, so it'll still be all intact, the way it'll look the same.
And in earlier years, I think the city worked effectively to put historic lighting across the bridge with the notion it is a part of the fabric of the community. So I just wonder, I hope this is the beginning of a partnership with 40 more years of life.
Sorry about that. I was trying to turn off the ringtone.
Thanks for the interlude.
Yeah.
That we work together with the state and the federal government to treat it as a distinctive historical feature of our community. But thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for tonight? And then just to let people for the general public know, we will move into general public comment after this where you can make comments or ask questions at that time. But I think for right now, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We look forward to keeping in touch and participating with the project. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, whoever you guys are.
All right, well now moving to seeing no other special presentations for tonight, we're going to move into item number 4, which is our general public comment section. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I apologize for being late. There's something going on Dunsmuir Avenue that has scrambled most of our fire department. I don't know what it is exactly, but that's the reason why I am late. In reviewing the agenda, I noticed that we don't have a spot for approving our agenda for tonight.
Correct, we took that out with our protocols.
Beautiful.
So that's all done.
Thank you.
So we'll go back on schedule with general public comment. So during this section of public comment, this is the time to make any general public comments on things not on the agenda, or if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question about our special presentation that occurred, or if you'd like to make a comment about items on our consent agenda, to just review those really quick, that would be our check register, the update on our banner bank signature cards. We have a revised live scan resolution for cannabis, cancellation of our January 2nd, 2020 meeting due to staff conflicts, and then 2020 City Council meeting schedule. So if you would like to comment on any of those things, or the presentation, or something not on our agenda, you can come up and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Paris Petrick from Shasta Avenue. And regarding what they just talked about in the bridge, I know that it was discussed to move the children's park to Tundali Park. And I thought that that might be something that would be impactful if it's going to be closed for that amount of time. So that was just a thought. The other thing I wanted to share with you all is that Siskiyou Media Council now, outside of being on our website, as we know the channel is up, you all should get to know your community reporter. And Taramina is her name. She did an interview on our new city manager, and that news is up. So if any of you are interested in looking at the news, go on our website at siskiyouMediaCouncil.org, and you can see from video on demand or on the channel itself that the news is running. The next up news will be in January. I believe the date is January 15th for their footage to be up, and we may actually have 10 cameras being donated to each one of our reporters. So we're kind of on the move, and we also got 2 new reporters. So we have Hornbrook, Wairika, Weed, Mount Shasta, McLeod, Dunsmuir, and Montague, Big Springs, and now Happy Camp and the Karuk tribe. So news of Siskiyou County is happening. So please watch and please get involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your passion for that, and moving forward, and everybody else with that. Does anyone else want to give general public comment for tonight?
Yes. Speaking as a treasurer. Council, about 10 years ago that me and Mr. Arth were on council ourselves, and about 3-4 years before that, Linda Guzman, I believe, was mayor, and Pat Hall was our city manager. Who's yelling? I can't.
Sorry, it was just a comment. If you could
Okay.
please just for a little bit, thank you. Go ahead.
At that time, it was identified we had a problem with the general fund, and they were considering both folding up the city and turning it into a county district, or as well passing a utility tax to bring in income. When we started with the finance committee meeting, and there was belief there was money to be talked about, we had quite a few meetings. We've been talking about dealing with this taxes and dealing with the general fund for a little while now, and we're yet to have any serious meetings on taxes, let alone financial meetings. We need to get started. We need to get in front of people. We need to talk to them. The way we were able to keep the city going all those years is we've been laying off a lot of people. Most of our staffing is getting really low. We're going to be seeing retirements again this year, but we do collect taxes to provide services to citizens, and the services that we're able to provide keep diminishing at a great rate, and at some point we need to talk to the citizens. So I would really like to see council get a focus again on the city budget and finances. The 5-year plan has not been talked about at all at the finance meeting. It needs to be started. And before we start making big plans about visioning for the city of Dunsmuir, we need to find a way to finance it. And now's the time to start.
Thank you. And just to let everyone know, we actually do have an item on the agenda tonight discussing 2020 budget and visioning workshops. So if you'd like to discuss on that item, it will be later in our agenda. Are there any other general public comments for tonight? Seeing none, we will close our general public comment. And thank you for the Caltrans employees and everybody supporting them for coming tonight. So you can feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting, or...
Bye,
guys! Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now move into item number 5, which is council and staff comments, and I will start on this end with you, Councilmember Art.
Wait, if you could get a copy, I'm sorry, if you could get us a copy of that so we could have it at City Hall, that'd be nice.
You can have these.
You have this?
If you want to leave
Sure,
it,
that's great. You
that'd be great.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Go ahead, Councilmember Art.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
And then there were 2.
All right.
It's going to be different next year, trust me. Madam Mayor, I have 3 items. The first is to thank everybody still in the room, and even the Caltrans people, for working in good faith in 2019 and without division or rancor. I think what we have done in the past year and what we're going to do next year is a happy contrast to what's going on at the national level and in different parts of our beautiful democracy. I think the more we can demonstrate good behavior and positive behavior, we will move ahead. The second is I did see in the local newspaper an article by Tim Holt, Are We One Step Closer to a Safe Trail to Mossbury Falls? And I hope 2020 is the year when the Mossbury Trail is dedicated to the public and open. And I think it's vitally important that whoever our leadership is in 2020, that the meeting with Union Pacific that the article speaks to happens in Dunsmuir, and involves the leadership of the city of Dunsmuir. We need to get the trail done in 2020. No more messing around. The third item is I wish everybody a peaceful and happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Keisler, welcome back.
Yes, nice to be back. First of all, I want to thank everybody that, you know, while I was down, I had so much support, had a lot of food, and special thanks to Karen and Bruce. You guys really took care of them, so I really appreciate it. And when you can't do nothing, you know, it really does kind of suck. So I really appreciate you guys being there. A couple things I want to bring to light is our pancakes with the Rotary Club. I'm in a Rotary, and pancakes with Santa. We had 125 people. We fed 125 families. There was one moment when I looked around and there were so many babies in the room, and I thought, you know what? Those are the gems of Dunsmuir. You know, and it was pretty cool. So if you haven't had a chance to come to one of these Christmas times where it's the whole community comes together and we all have breakfast together with Santa over there, it's pretty cool. I cordially invite you to come check it out and experience it. Another thing that they do is they have the parade through town with candles. You set up the Christmas tree, they lit up the Christmas tree, Santa came, and there wasn't really a lot of people. It was great, but a lot of people, I don't know where they were. So I emphasize supporting the events when they're there for them.
Do you know who sponsors that one?
I think what happened was they changed the dates, and then they had a Macy's thing going in McLeod, and a lot of people went to that.
I just never saw anything about it this year, and someone asked me about it, and I was like, that should have happened. So I think next year, if you want any help with advertising, let me know.
No, man, because I don't like sitting in the rain by myself.
Yeah.
And then I want to echo what Peter said about the falls. My God, this has got to be the year. You know, this has got to be, this council has to take hold of the fact that whatever it takes or whoever it is, we've got to make that Mossbury Falls. I mean, we're this close. There's no reason why we can't do it. We've got to bring them people on board. And the whole thing was for public safety. Let's keep that in mind. And that's our push. And then, one more thing is I got invited, and I didn't know this, but they have a little play they put on at the Dunsmuir Elementary School. And I watched these kids perform their hearts out. And if that's something that you haven't got a chance to see, you don't know what you're missing. So they usually have, every year they have, I think, come throughout a couple of times. And I'll be bringing back to let you guys know when they're having the next play. But at the elementary school, when they put on these little kids put on this play, you can't put it into words. You just got to come experience it. And it's another way that, for me, I'm proud of our youth and of our community. And it just goes to show you that, you know, we got some good parents that are doing some good things with some good kids that are doing some good things for our community. And I'm proud to be part of that. You know, like Peter said, on behalf of me and Karen, we'd like to wish everybody Merry Christmas. Will Smith.
Councilmember Bryan, try and top that.
Well, it has been a while since we've met. I know it has been a while since this event occurred, but I'd like to thank our Public Works Department and all the employees in the city for being on top of that rather severe first storm of the season back on the 26th of November. I was driving back down from the mountain where I work, and Caltrans and the county were not as they were not there as fast or as thorough in the first couple of hours and days as Dunsmuir City was. I know that takes a lot of effort, personal sacrifice for a few individuals, so I'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to them. Otherwise, I'm excited about the new year and everything that holds. I hope that the Mossbury Falls can happen, and I hope that we come to some plan for the next 3, 4, 5 years relative to our general fund. And I think we've done some really good work this year on that, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. with my fellow council members here. That being said, I would also like to say Merry Christmas to us all.
Yay.
Councilmember Deutsch.
I'd like to also take a moment to bring up the bomb cyclone that we had. I don't know if people realize what actually took place. One of the things that took place was Big Dave and Karen were stuck in his pickup truck without medication after just having his stitches removed and his gas taken off, and he spent 15 hours just about 3 miles south of here having fun, not having fun. And so just if you didn't know it, the set a record that night. It's called the bomb cyclone. It was the lowest pressure ever recorded in the state of California. And the lower the pressure, the more intense the storm. That's why it was like an explosion of snow. And then the other thing is that they also off the coast, just pretty much west of us, had the largest wave ever recorded off the coast of California at the same time, 75-foot wave. So that's what happened that night, and unfortunately, nobody was really prepared for it. And it turned out, I was talking with Caltrans, with Sergeant Wetstein, and with CHP, and with Dan Padilla of the fire department. We talked about getting the community building open, because the vision most of us all had, including Caltrans, was there were 20 or 30 cars stuck down there, and a couple of minutes we'll get them out. In fact, Dave was told that it would be 50 minutes we'll have you out of there. And so nobody really understood what the scope of it was, but in the future I think we maybe have to consider this may happen again and how do we deal with it. So I do want to thank the CHP. There were actually, I was at 4 o'clock watching out the window, and I was talking with Dave every once in a while, and I would see a semi go by, and then after a while a car would go by, and I'm expecting all of a sudden there would be like the gates would open up and the cars would start flowing, but no, it was two CHP officers with shovels that were out there, one by one, getting a car or a semi out of that. And so it took all those extra hours that day. One of the things that I want to bring up outside of that is, as the liaison with the chamber, I attended the chamber meeting that we had last week, and they wanted to pass on a real concern, and that is that we talked about the idea that the best estimate is only 40% of the homes in Dunsmuir are being lived in by the, as the residents. The rest are either vacation homes, second homes, or Airbnb. And we all really feel, and I think everybody does, that this really affects the whole fabric of a community. When 60% of what would be families or people there are not there or coming in and whatever. So what the chamber asked me to pass along to the council was they'd like to have us take a look at what can be done to take some sort of control over that. I know there's all kinds of things about that. I was trained on that when I went to, or I attended a session on that at the League of California Cities Conference, and there are ways other cities are dealing with it. Vacation cities like us are being gobbled up. Basically, if somebody sees a house that can be turned into a vacation home or an Airbnb, they realize they can pull in like $5,000 a month just by doing nothing. And it becomes a blight on the city, and some way or other the chamber would like us to look into this. I assume at some point we could have it on the agenda and then ask the planning commission to take a look at it. But I do think we need to start taking a look and taking a more proactive approach. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Before I move on to staff, I just had a couple of comments. You reminded me, thank you, Councilmember Deutsch. So I sit as the vice chair of the Siskiyou County Air Pollution Control District, and the city of Dunsmuir did not put in any applications for fireplace and stove upgrades. So I strongly urge individuals who have homes, or if you know of anyone who has homes who have old stoves and fireplaces, and that is their main source of heat, there is grant money at the county for upgrading those stoves for energy efficiency standards. Safety is a big one too. So please reach out to myself, and I'll also get those applications for City Hall. They just got another round of funding for people to upgrade those fireplaces, and it's really important that if that's your only source of heat, that those are cleaned properly, that they're maintained, and they're upgraded for the best heat efficiency for your situation.
Recommendation is that you also put some copies at the Community Resource Center.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, you said, if you have a fireplace or a stove and that's your heat, that there's grants available to get your stuff upgraded or fixed.
Correct.
Information is at City Hall and at the Resource Center, or get a hold of you.
Yep.
Yeah, so they came up to me specifically because they had no applicants from Dunsmuir this year, and last year I think they only had one. So again, please reach out. That's basically free money. That is available for anyone. You do not have to have an income status. You just have to have your primary heat source be from a wood burning stove.
Not only that, but the chimney guys are like 3 and 4 months out. You want them to come clean your chimney, they ain't gonna come to you in summer, so this could be a good thing.
So
Good job there.
yeah, so we'll get those applications for people. I know it's that first snow really pushed a lot of us to think about that, you know, especially for people who don't have monitor heaters or kerosene or anything like that.
Or a blanket in the truck.
Yeah. Yeah, I do not envy you for that one.
Oh, man.
So I would also like to thank Clemens for continuing their garbage service during the snow. That was amazing for a lot of people. I was a little worried that we wouldn't have any garbage pickup, but I didn't hear any complaints from anyone. So pretty much if you had your garbage unshoveled, mine actually had a little berm because I am on a corner and I get all of the berms. Not complaining, but they did a very good job this year. But I had a little berm and they still took my garbage, which was really nice of them to do. So thank you to Clemens for keeping up that, and as well as thank you to Public Works crew and everyone else who helped, and especially the first responders. We had a lot of really bad wrecks on the highway, so thank you to the first responders, Sheriff, CHP, and the fire department for that. That's not a fun day for them. Other items is just assisting some of the city staff with some state reporting. We do have to report on our water efficient landscaping ordinance every year now. So helping out with that and making sure these state mandates get done, especially water board state mandates, because they like to fine you if you don't do them. So keeping us out of that, which is delightful. So just a lot of housekeeping stuff and assisting Todd or Rico with moving forward with some of the different planning items that may or may not have been neglected over time and not done for years. So just been kind of dinked around backstage with that. So with that, I'll move over to staff. So I'm going to sit right you pass.
Sure. We have a tentative start date for a full-time code enforcement officer for January 13th.
Can we pause to applaud?
Yeah. Can you repeat that into the mic?
You bet. We have a tentative start date for a full-time code enforcement officer for January 13th. So.
Too early to announce the name? It's fine.
Maybe if they'd like to come to the meeting after the 13th.
That would be a great idea.
That'd be nice.
Okay. And
he or she will be introduced.
Yes. If everything goes swimmingly. The next is we had a public notice that went out for a distressed building ordinance that went in front of the Planning Commission that received some positive feedback. We need to notice for a month before the next City Council meeting, but we will be bringing that ordinance for a first reading and comment on the January 16th meeting of the next City Council.
Is it a 10-day notice or a month?
It's a month.
Is that our own local ordinance that says that?
It's local ordinance, yes.
Should probably look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Because state's only 10 days.
Okay.
So
That was the advice of my counsel. But needless to say, it's coming early January, so there's that. And not to be a Grinch, I just want to point out that during the closure, during the bomb cyclone, there was an announcement from Caltrans that the road would be closed just north of Shasta Lake. And there was a really poor response to all the folks that had been trapped on the highway all the way up to here. Chief Padilla stopped counting at 300 vehicles that were stranded. Jesus. And Caltrans did not make it out. We called a region-wide meeting to get an answer from Caltrans, and Caltrans did not show, so we're looking for a response.
Really?
That's your new personal mission.
Oh, yeah, I was on that freeway, believe me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they left early.
I just wanted to point out that City Hall will be closed the 24th and 25th. That's a Wednesday, Tuesday and Wednesday. And also the 31st and 1st, those next 2 weeks. And then the other days, the City Hall will be open from 9 until 1. Get your stuff done between 9 and 1.
Why is that?
Staffing.
That's another way, he's got shocking stuff to do.
Yeah.
Staffing.
I thought we were open full-time last year, or I mean, except for those days.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so it's just,
The difference, I assume, is that people are taking leave during that period of time
Yes.
that they didn't take last year.
sorry, you could just, elaborate on it a little bit.
Yeah,
Just vacation.
yes, vacation and an executive decision, and my understanding is in the past. Except one city manager, the practice has been to close the office except for bare bones staff during the week of Christmas.
That 1 week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I have a question of the city manager, if I could. Could you give us a report in Japan?
Where do you want me to start? I'm ruined on American sushi. I was eating 3-hour-old fish right at the docks at 8 a.m., eating Kobe beef and enjoying everything the city has to offer, including incredible hospitality and kindness and no pushing and shoving, and a culture where people actually look out for each other. It was really refreshing and hard to come back.
Where was this?
Japan.
Do we see a sister city relationship?
I would really like that.
Interesting.
They like coming for the mountain.
See, just so you know, some of us think that what he's talking about is called baked. But that's yeah.
Second question.
Thank you.
So some statistics for the month of November. We had about 500 patrol hours down here, 170 calls for service, took 17 cases, 14 traffic stops, 3 citations. We had 4 arrests, which included 1 felony booking and 4 misdemeanor bookings. Some of the details on the arrests, we had a public intoxication arrest on Dunsmuir Avenue. There was a typo here on the felony burglary arrest. It was supposed to say Cornerstone, not La Perla. However, we did, I think it was the last council meeting, I was asked if we had any leads or suspects on the La Perla burglary. We now do have a solid suspect and are working on that and hoping to have a booking, a jail booking on this guy, hopefully within the month. Yes. So some more investigation that we have to do, but I think that we got the guy identified.
Good.
Good work.
And they, as we originally suspected, it's related to the Cornerstone burglary. So we assisted Siskiyou County Probation with the probation arrest on Florence Loop, and then we had a misdemeanor drug possession arrest and a probation violation arrest on Upper Soda, where we got 0.1 grams of methamphetamine. The burglaries, we had 3 burglaries. There was a vehicle burglary on Dunsmuir Avenue, Perlin and the Cornerstone. We had 2 thefts, one in Eleanor and one at the Dollar General. No assault and batteries, but we did have 1 domestic violence incident, 2 vandalisms, both on Dunsmuir Avenue, and then just regular disturbing the peace calls all over the city. But the only other thing I'd mention is a year ago, it was last Christmas. If we can recall, Harley's Antiques got burglarized early Christmas morning. We identified a suspect, so we did a search warrant and recovered the property. He ended up fleeing. He finally was taken back into custody. And I just got notified today that he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. So we finally got justice for Harley's Antiques, and as of today, we don't have to deal with him for many more years. So he'll be going away.
Good job.
Madam Mayor, questions? Sergeant, I'm just curious, it seems that we have a burglar comes in for a period of time and you catch him or he or she leaves, but then they go away and there's a gap. Is that about right, the way it tends to work? There's not a constant flow of burglaries?
I think that, well, I mean, speaking of like the Ben Osborne, with him burglarizing Harley's Antiques, he's just on the lam constantly. He's always got felony warrants out for his arrests, and so he goes to different places in the county, lays low, and he runs every single time. And he's one of those guys who's willing to jump into rivers, jump over cliffs, I mean, to lay his life on the line to get away from the police. So he was hard to catch, but the other guy who's a suspect in the 2 commercial burglaries, mainly, I guess he spends some time around here, but mainly is in the Weed area. But we do get people that travel through sometimes and hit places, but it's usually some locals, if not in the city, they're around.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah.
Still lock up your cars?
Yes, this time of year, we end up taking a lot of burglaries, vehicle burglaries and residential burglaries. Packages, get your packages from like Amazon off your porch, take a lot of thefts on those. In fact, yesterday, or day before yesterday, I took another residential burglary in North Shasta. Place got completely raided. I mean, truckloads of stuff got taken. So, and this is with the house being locked up. So if you're leaving for any amount of time, let your neighbor know, let us know. Yeah, there was a lot of loss in this last one. So it is happening, and it always happens this time of year.
Just so everybody knows, if you are going somewhere, you can call the sheriff's department and say, hey, I'm out of here, I'll be gone this long. They will come by and check your house a couple times a day, so,
Yeah.
But you gotta let them know.
Yeah, and it's just as effective, let the neighbors know too, so they can be watching out for your place.
And everything too, after Christmas, if you have large gifts that you gave, like TVs and things like that, make sure to not necessarily put the TV box outside by the trash if you're gonna
So
leave.
everybody knows you got a TV.
That's another indicator that they're been warning people about is, especially on New Year's Eve, people will come by your house and they see that you leave for a party and they know that you have a TV for Christmas, they will go after that. So make sure to get rid of any large boxes indicating what you got. So that's a good one too, but thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other staff comment?
I have a question. First of all, thank you, Sergeant Munstein. Just a quick question. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing here in Dunsmuir, but 500 patrol hours, I think that's the same as last month. And if I recall right, we're scheduled to do 5,200 in a year. So adding that up, I just wanted to ask, is this reflective of, what you think it takes to patrol Dunsmuir? Because we're set to exceed by 800 hours, the quote hours. So, I hear from you guys that nothing's particularly changed in terms of the overall effect of the reduction in hours. But is it a struggle to bring it lower to where it should be? And any given month, it could go way up, but it has to be made up somewhere else if we're to hit that target. So if you could just,
Yeah, the numbers, the past couple months have been kind of low for the patrol numbers, and that's been because we've got, I think it was about a third of our staff has been out on injury. And that's for countywide. So we are running really low bodies right now, but I just checked the numbers for where we're at. We are actually 3% over where we should be right now. So we're actually,
that's not so bad overall.
No, it's not so bad overall. And this is, the 500 hours is low. It's usually in this, between the 650 and 700 hours a month. So we got people that are starting to come back now, so I'm thinking over the next couple months we're going to see another spike in the hours down here.
Cool. On that note, if maybe sometime in February we can do the second quarterly meeting.
Yeah, just let me know whenever you guys want to do it.
I had a call into Captain Alvin, but I have not got a response back. So I will put this out to you. We would like to have, you don't know about it, but we would like to have a discussion about grants. He had mentioned, Colin mentioned something about grants for cameras in the downtown area. We would like to, I'd like to take a look at that.
Okay, I gotta actually email him tonight, so I'll mention that in an email.
Just wondering why you didn't call me back.
I don't know.
Where's the love? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, just a comment with the announcement that we are going to have a code enforcement / animal control officer reporting in January. This is obviously an opportunity for both training and coordination between the sheriff's office, this new resource for the city of Dunsmuir, with the notion we're going to be better off in trying to keep our community safe and healthy. And I remember talking about dog fights and the limited things that the sheriff could do this summer, likewise with empty buildings and transients. So I think this is really a credit to all of us, and looking forward to next year.
Thank you. Great, we'll now move into item number 6, which is committee reports. Are there any committee reports?
I would just like to point out that we should be early in January looking at an airport committee meeting. And I've talked with Monica about that. She's got some issues we want to look up, so in terms of maintenance and cost and things. So I'd like to try and get something lined up.
We had so many finance committee recommendations that the council adopted relative to the airport. I think there were about 4 when we adopted the budget this summer. If at that meeting at least do a preliminary look, hey, where are we at relative to each one of those important goals?
Yeah, we can put something together.
And maybe Pete and Barbara should be together at the first year.
Well, this to be recognized. First of all, I did attend the planning commission meeting with the city manager mentioned, where the primary issue was adoption of the empty, abandoned building nuisance ordinance, and the staff did a fantastic job. Rico and the city manager, there was a significant turnout. The audience chairs weren't full, but it was close. And there was unanimous support for moving forward and for the council to get to consider this in January. That is a really significant achievement. The second is, I was part of maybe the first agenda review committee with the mayor and the city manager, and in our discussion, we talked about the committee structure we agreed to for 2019. Public Works never got organized, never met. Maybe we don't need Public Works. The airport committee, is it focused on getting things done, or does it just meet? But for whoever we choose as our leaders for 2020, I hope to see on our agenda in January what committees are viable. Should we have general committees? Should we have ad hoc committees? Should we have fewer committees? But this will be a challenge for our new leadership, with the notion, instead of just meeting, I think we need to work harder on planning and objectives and getting things done.
So thank you. And to continue that in reference to Public Works, what I had recommended instead is maybe discontinuing the Public Works as we have it now, and then maybe just picking one major project and having an ad hoc work on that.
Sweet.
Because again, so similar to the moss spray issue, we're all very concerned about moss spray. I think the iron's hot, frankly. We've got a lot of foothold, especially with the Trail Association. So maybe it's an opportunity for Councilmember Arth and yourself to get together, discontinue the Public Works, and then just do a moss spray falls ad hoc, where that's the one project you have.
I have a problem with that.
Or if you want to do parking, either one. I would say pick
Two of us
one.
can't bring them to their knees.
I'm down, baby, I'm
Okay.
down, cool.
So we'll talk about putting that on for the January meeting to discuss our committee structures, and the same thing for the airport. It might be more productive at this point to have an ad hoc instead of a round table committee, but we'll discuss that. And I don't think we've ever brought a resolution forward to form that airport committee. So I think it'd be good to do that in early January before the next meeting as well. So thank you for that. Any other committee reports for today? I know Councilmember Bryan, did you mention there was a finance or no?
I don't believe there was a finance.
between us. There may have been.
Well, I think we'll get back to it with our agenda item on the top.
I believe it was
okay.
just before our prior meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other committee reports, we'll move on to item number 7, which is approval of the minutes for the regular council meeting on November 21st, 2019.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for November 21st, 2019.
I don't think you can because you weren't there.
Oh, well, I read them.
Yeah, well, thank you. So for the members who were there, any edits or would you like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Great.
Second.
There's a motion to approve by Councilmember Arth, second by Councilmember Deutsch. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the November 21st, 2019 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Thank you. Minutes pass. I know, that's so odd. That never happens.
I know what?
I know you missed it too.
No.
You missed Peter and Bruce agreeing on like every single
I watched the
item.
video.
Something in the air that.
You're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
No.
All right, well now moving to item number 8, which is our consent agenda. Tonight we have consent agenda items 8A, which is check register for November 15th through December 6th, 2019. Item B is an update on the Banner Bank signature cards, which is, I believe we have a form from Blake here that we should be filling out. Yeah. And item C, which is a revised live scan resolution for the cannabis 2019-28. Item D is the cancellation of our January 2nd, 2020 City Council meeting due to staffing conflicts. Item E, it would be our 2020 City Council meeting schedule. Is there any discussion on consent agenda items or questions?
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
All right, there's a motion to adopt Councilmember Art by Councilmember Keisler. Councilmember Art, you had a question?
Well, I'm happy to second the motion, and my comment or question is for item 8E, City Council meeting schedule. Can we add to that schedule the pre-agenda meetings so that everybody knows when those happen as well?
So it's just 2 members of the council, so they're not open meetings, so we don't have to necessarily schedule those. But I think I had sent the city manager a 6-month schedule of rotations. That'll change after tonight depending on who's mayor.
Exactly so.
So once that's done, we'll send out a revised one with the different dates so that everybody has a go. So I think the next meeting was gonna go to Bruce or Matthew, because I think.
We have the next year on everybody's calendar, and it will change, but it'll be an easy fix.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows.
Yep.
Because, I mean, part of what we agreed to in the protocols is if it's not my turn, but it's Councilmember Keisler, I could go to Councilmember Keisler and say, hey, I'd like to see this on the agenda.
Yeah, we would prefer to have that discussion in the open meetings, just so that people know that we're requesting the items, but yes, then you would know who the 2 are showing up. Any other questions on the consent agenda?
No.
Seeing none, there was a motion by Councilmember Keisler, seconded by Councilmember Arth. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving consent agenda items 8A through E, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Moving to item number 9, which is public hearing. We have no public hearings for tonight. So we will move into, I did reorder this agenda with Councilmember Arth to have our election of mayor and vice mayor be the first action item we will take today. So we will move into that item, which is 10A. So as we all know, we all rotate pretty much every year, or talk about rotating every year. So we will now open up the floor. We will begin with the position of mayor. So we'll now open the floor for nominations for mayor.
Question, Madam Mayor, before, you got time to do it again? Are you interested in doing it again? Yeah? I nominate Juliana for mayor. Let's keep everything the way it's going, because I think we've been doing good the way we're at.
Okay. Like how the last 2 years I've shown up to meetings and I'm like, okay.
I like how you can even tell Mario to shut up.
I second that,
Thank you.
but in light of restrictions sometimes, I know with us younger, full-time working individuals, if we can't make important events, maybe we could perhaps have the mayor, if we do elect you or myself, designate someone from the council to represent the mayor at those events. We could come up with a schedule of that, so we'd be represented more consistently.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and that's why I think it's really important for what, kind of digressing a little bit, what Councilmember Arthur and I discussed about, like Moss Great Falls, for example. I think doing an ad hoc of 2 council members would be wonderful for those bigger projects we know are going to happen, and maybe assigning 1 or 2 people out just to make sure that someone is represented, at least 2 people know what's going on, so that they can make those things. I think that would be really important moving forward. So, yeah, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
If I could, as a matter of discussion, I think, I know that it's been discussed kind of, but I think it should be pointed out that I know that next in line would have been Vice Mayor Bryan. I understand also that there's concern about how much work and all of that, so I hope that you don't feel like you're being passed over, because I was just as easy to have you be mayor next as anybody.
I'm eager to serve Dunsmuir and the will of the council, and I think we've done a lot of meaningful work, and we'll continue to do that. I really appreciate Mayor Casey's ability to encourage productivity at our meetings, and I think that would be extremely important to have that stability going forward for another year.
Thank you.
So I asked him, and he said, well,
I also should point out,
right now, so cool.
I also should point out that the fact that Councilmember Keisler was the one who nominated should be noted, because he has his heart on someday being back to being mayor again. But I was surprised by the fact he did it, but I'm also very impressed by that.
Let's go to voting.
I will. All right, thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of mayor before we move into voting?
We're gonna have a little public comment.
Oh, yes, thank you. I don't remember how we did public
We never
comment.
have before.
Well,
When we voted, when it came down to this, that public ain't never had
I
nothing.
think it's important that the public should have some comments on an election of mayor.
Or not.
sure. So if there's no other
That's the case, we should put it up the ballot.
There's a public moving in that direction right now.
No, I just kidding. So there's no other nominations on the table. I'll open up public comment.
I think watching this process between all of you is extraordinary. I love the fact that our mayor is a woman, and a young woman at that, and so I also think it's amazing, and thank you all for doing this without pay. Thank you.
Well, thank
You
you.
had to remind us about the help.
I also cover the McLeod meetings, our board member meetings, and I've been doing that for quite a few years, and I just want you to know that I have never met anybody as diplomatic and so well-rounded and informed. I've been so impressed by, how you conduct these meetings, and it's been a real pleasure, and I think you're great for the position. So I just wanted to give you my thumbs up.
Thank you. What was your name?
Shireen Strauss.
Oh, good? Thank you.
She's also a reporter for the paper.
Thank you. We all know who you are. We just want to make sure we get your name for the record. Well, thank you,
Well,
everybody.
nomination's been made, come call a vote, Madam Mayor.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll move into a vote. All those in,
Well, can there be any council comment?
yeah, if you want to discuss.
Oh, well, I do.
That was really great timing.
Yeah.
I always defer to you, Pacific, except for the Dunsmuir Trail. I thought about this, I was going to propose staying true to what we saw work for 2019, which is the citizens of Dunsmuir in 2018 place their trust in the 2 newest members of the council. So I think it's very important that we stand behind the hopes of the voters. I think Matthew, working with him over the year on the finance committee, what I like about him is his focus and precision in moving the agenda. Our budget, in my opinion, living in the community for 12 years, having served as mayor on the council, having been recalled, our budget was a basket piece. And I no longer see it as a basket piece. Later we're going to talk about integrating the plans for the city with our budget and our resources. So I was indifferent as to whether Councilmember Lucchese stayed as mayor or we had Matthew step us. It didn't make any difference to me. So I'm happy that for the sum of this, we realize we've got a good group here and to just continue to support them. So it's fine with me.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion?
I would just hope that, I kind of think we rock. I kind of think that we're pretty good too. And I kind of hope that we would also maintain that confidence in our public, knowing that we're doing what we do, we're doing it for you. Now, I'm going to take one step further to prove that I think that we have the confidence of the people. When we're not doing good, this place is packed. And I see 3 people out there in that audience, which leads me to believe that we've earned the confidence of the people. And then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. That's why I kind of think we should just keep it the way it is.
I guess from my point of view, thank you. Definitely had kind of talked to Councilmember Brian previously about remaining mayor for another year. And the best way to put it is kind of talking to Dave Clarino earlier before coming here, because I like to have a cup of soup before I come here. It's usually the only time I get to eat on these days. And no, that is not a euphemism for beer. It was an actual cup of soup. It's a little chilly today, and it was delightful. But, you know, whether I have a title or not doesn't really mean that I'm not going to do the work that needs to be done. So I really appreciate everybody putting their trust in me. I know I'm not Big Dave. I am not out there constantly boisterous, big heart. I'm definitely more of the orderly backroom type person. But I think that's what has made serving the last year as mayor enjoyable, is that every single person on this council really does fit a role and has been doing really well. And I know that we're looking at some financial strife and a little bit of panic, just a little underlying panic, just a little bit. But, you know, I feel good, and I think a lot of people feel good. And I think, you know, having that, like you said, that trust and the fact that people are still positive is a really great thing. So thank you to everybody. I hope I do you right.
Call the vote, woman, call the vote.
I brought it before, you know, the choices between Matthew and yourself, and I just want to say now, pulling back from that I think that the decision that we're making right now, keeping you, it's like a basketball team, and there's a point guard, and you're kind of the point guard for our team. And I think that the fact that the 5 of us have been able to do as much together and work together in various areas is in large part a testament to your leadership. So I just wanted to give you that.
Thank you. So there's been a call to question by Councilmember Keisler. So we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of allowing me to serve for another year as your mayor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is this a 2 for order? Matthew's
Matthew's next.
Well, we'll do the mayor and then we'll move to vice.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Are you voting, Madam Mayor?
I don't know if I typically
You can vote.
have. I
You
mean,
can
I'll sure.
Sure.
Okay.
I like me.
I don't want to be that person who's like, yes, I'm going to vote for myself. All right, well.
I move that for Vice President, or Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, that we pick Matthew Bryan.
I said that.
I was going to say, with the impeachment happening yesterday, I mean, I would totally take Matthew as Vice President if that's the next step. But thank you. Thank you. So we've got a nomination for Councilmember Bryan to serve as Vice Mayor for another year. Do you accept?
I accept.
All right, thank you.
And I second you.
All right.
I thought Peter had.
I think you all just seconded it. So,
Acclamation.
So are there any other nominations before we move into public comment? There are no other nominations. Would anyone like to make a public comment on the vice mayor nomination? Seeing none, but Paris is holding up a heart.
Little
So
hearts from the audience.
I think-
Either a heart or a zero.
I think you have the chair's stamp of approval. Moving into discussion, I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Bryan for serving as vice mayor, especially when we didn't have a city manager and I was a little bit kind of beside myself. You are definitely a very nice voice of reason to have on the council, so thank you.
I second that motion.
All right. And seeing no other discussion, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of nominating Councilmember Bryan for the position of Vice Mayor for one more year, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.
Congratulations, you guys.
Wow. You got really close to making me cry, and I don't cry. So, good for you guys for almost getting there one day. All right, we will now move into our next item of new business, which is item 10B. Just to remind everyone, we will go back to our old business after this one. But our new business is 2020 budget and visioning workshops. So you can hear you, Haas.
So, in our last couple of finance committee meetings and in our last pre-agenda meeting, Peter brought up the idea of conducting visioning into the new year. One, having facilitated meetings, one to bring members of the community up to speed on what our budget looks like and what are the things that are absolutely necessary and what are the slim things that we can potentially cut. And as part of this is trying to start making the pitch for putting a group together, which Big Dave has offered to take on. It would be great if we had another volunteer from council to get folks behind, say, a Friends of Dunsmuir group to get out the word that we need to consider a tax increase at the November election next year for either a combination of or an increase in TUT or TOT or a combination of both. And also envisioning when we lay out where we are in the budget and if we were able to bring additional money into our coffers, where is it the community wants to see us go? And so it's an educational experience for the public, but it's also an opportunity for the public to weigh in on where we see us going. And again, keeping in mind that we have a limited budget, but there's a lot we can do with volunteers and some of the stuff, the initiatives that we have in the works, such as the distressed building ordinance, having a code enforcement officer on, and a host of potential business opportunities that are in the cooking stage right now.
I have a quick question, and then I'll go to Councilmember Keisler. So I know we have prioritized going to a 2-year budget. For the visioning workshops, what's the time frame that we're asking people to kind of envision? Are we asking just like 2 years out or 5 years? I know this isn't a general plan visioning, so like 25 years is probably way too much.
Correct.
So do you have a preferred timeline?
So my preference is for 2 years because we can get something that's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. When we go up to 5 years, we're really, we can extrapolate if there's a best fit line for the last couple of years, but it doesn't take into account things that are unforeseen, like a potential recession or a downturn, or on the positive side, an increase in property tax revenues coming in. We can look out 5 years, but it's just very variable, and it's more of a guesstimate. 2 years is is pretty accurate, and that's what I would suggest. If people want to go out to 5 years, we certainly can do that.
I have a suggestion relative to that. I agree completely that the 2 years we can actually work with. If you're out to 5 years, say that tax of any sort, if it's increased in November, will have a real effect over the 5 years. If it's not, it'll have a very big deficit, very large difference. However, the sheriff's contract increase is inevitable, and it's 2.5 years out.
Yep.
So if we could at least keep that as a reference point, that it's a very large increase that's coming.
That's a great point.
Councilmember Keisler, you had a question.
Yeah. Man, you got fancy words, you know, and I understand what you said, but a lot of people probably didn't. So I'm going to try to put it in a little bit more Dunsmuir way. We need to have a meeting, and we need to have on the board everything like in a circle. And this is this, this is this, this is this. Then we bring everybody in here, and we're going to show them this is a circle, and this is what we got. This is this, and this is this, and this, and this is what we're down to. And you, for yourself, with your eyes, come into this meeting, you can actually see where we are and why we are at that point to where we're about to cut some services. And that's where we're at. So, by having this visioning thing and talking about, like Peter said, things that we can cut, or things that, you know, I told Blake today to start saving aluminum cans in the city hall. So, I mean, we are really cutting things, and to have this meeting where they put up a chart and they can show you, you can see. I think that's what we need to have. That's, well, let me put it to you this way. I'm the kind of guy, you got to show me. So, show me.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move to public comment?
Yes, City Manager, I remember when you first came on, you had talked about the idea that in preparing the public for this, that there's a process that kind of is in place where you bring together a couple of focus groups. Is that something that you'd still like to do? I mean, because one thing is depending upon who happens to show up at a particular meeting on a particular night, but if you have a process that you go through that can determine what are the items that the people would be willing to have their taxes raised for, is that right? Would you explain that, please?
That's correct. The visioning lays the groundwork for that. As the city manager, I can't lead those groups, so therefore why I'm looking for volunteers to pull this together, to get an understanding once you know what the budget situation is. What are the things that are going to resonate most with the public in terms of raising new revenues that are likely to pass at the ballot next November? So having Big Dave and somebody else from council offering to do this, I can certainly be in attendance and add my 2 cents. I just can't, by law, take on that role.
But you can get...
You guys can
But you can give me all the information, though, and the ammunition that we need to prove our point.
I'm absolutely. And thank you for the translation. We are exactly on the same page.
Okay, cool.
Councilmember Bryan had a comment, question?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I don't know if maybe this goes into conversation, but I was discussing some way of bringing more of the public in, so either having smaller meetings where we meet, maybe even go to locations and meet with people. So say, hold one at the resource center, hold one maybe for the business community, go to the Rotary, present there, maybe make it kind of a road show. Conversely, if we do a larger meeting, maybe see if we could get a local restaurant to help us provide some food or something of that nature to bring people in and make it a little bit more interesting and appealing and a draw. But simply I'd like to say that, you know, the vision works both ways. One, we don't have to raise revenues, but for any revenues we do not raise, we will have to cut services. So it's that combination and what our people, our citizens want, ultimately, with those options.
In a perfect world, raising taxes only gets you so far. Hopefully, with the vacant building ordinance and code enforcement and it working well, assuming that it does, lays the groundwork for people wanting to relocate here and open businesses. And businesses are what brings in the money that we need to succeed.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I will be bringing Ed Valenzuela to these meetings. He is our county supervisor. He is also going to be up for re-elections, and I'll be voting Ed.
As an individual, not as a council decision.
I would also like to congratulate him on his new appointment. He got elected to, I can't think what it is, but I know he's sitting there next to the governor.
Rural caucus.
The rural caucus, and he's, the first thing, I had a discussion with him the other morning, and the first thing he told me that his priority for Dunsmuir is fire. His second priority for Dunsmuir is economic development. So I think it'd be imperative to bring Ed to our meeting, and I was thinking, Bruce, would you want to help me on this?
I was gonna say that.
Let's take this and do what we do, okay?
So before we get ahead of ourselves, we still do have public comment. Would anyone like to come up and give public comment on the item? Seeing none, okay, we'll move back to discussion. There you go. Councilmember Arth, did you have any questions or anything?
Well, he reminded him of the high school, of the elementary school, and when you did this, that was a great turnout there.
I wanted to make a few comments, and I'm sorry that the city treasurer has left this meeting because it was in the 2008 to 2010 period when nobody wanted to serve on the Dunsmuir City Council that Mario and I led a unanimous city council to pass a unanimous resolution to do a project called Dunsmuir 2020. We were going to go out 10 years and vision what this community, the community that maybe wanted to hand the keys back to the county because it was hopeless. And it did involve visioning and raising taxes and economic development and raising utility rates and considering cannabis, and the consequence of that was the citizens of Dunsmuir, by a narrow margin, recalled 4/5 of the council. So it's gratifying to me as we reach 2020 in a few weeks that we are back to believing in ourselves. As far as specifics, and I particularly thank Councilmember Keisler, in the middle of this year, under our protocols, I was searching for a second to say, are we up to doing this? Can we do this? I think it was before we got our city manager. And you said yes. So doggedly, finally, we're just where I think we ought to be. I'm not sure we would have gotten the city manager without our newly elected mayor and vice mayor. So you could see the pieces coming together. I think the 2-year budget is fine. I hope that the vice mayor stays as chair of the finance committee and we actually develop a 2-year budget that starts to anticipate certainly the increase in the sales tax. The November election is 10 months away. So we need to engage the citizens in a vision. Do you want to cut services? Do you want to raise revenues? What is it you want to do? A prime example is green waste. For the budget that we have before us with goals, and there's 4 pages worth of things the city needs to do. A little gift from the last city manager and the staff. Some of them are done, but many are not. So our contract with Clements, or if we're going to go for another waste hauler, we have green waste issues, we have tree trimming issues, we've got the new ordinance, vegetation management. How is all that going to work?
We have some stuff going on behind the scenes.
What do citizens want?
One of the things that I think we had brought up too is sending out a survey, we can get a stamp made with the link to an online survey and also have paper surveys.
to basically just ask people, general questions about, what, and actually list some of our priorities that maybe come out of the first workshop of saying, here are the priorities that were listed at this first workshop. How would you prioritize these? What are your top 3? And actually make people start to rank those things. So I think the survey will be helpful too, because again,
Absolutely.
I believe it was Councilmember Bryan who said it earlier, not everyone has a very open schedule to be able to attend these meetings or attend the workshops. And I think definitely sending something out with the billing or doing something online and pushing that gives people a little bit more luxury of time. And then maybe assisting.
It allows them a voice.
Yeah, and definitely, like I said, people who work night shifts are never going to be able to come to this meeting.
Perhaps we could reach out to former Mayor Bryce Craig and see if maybe with his videography profession and company down there, he could maybe assist a group coming together to perhaps explain this in a short informational video. That might go far.
Typically, cities will do this in the form of what's called an online open house, and it gets to exactly what Juliana is getting at, but it takes the same form, but it's truncated as in comparison to what we would do in person. So it allows everybody that wants to participate.
The other thing I would front load for the first 60 to 90 days while it's rainy and snowy is community promotion / economic development. The finance committee and the council, we hung tough. One of our values is community promotion, but we heard from the Dunsmuir Chamber, but we don't know really what events they're going to support and fund. And we heard from any number of community groups, we want to do this and this and this, from steampunk to you know what. But we need to have the community and the council and the city. If you want money from the city, what are you going to produce to help the community move forward? This is the discipline that Mashpee worked hard on, took some heat about. But from the pool to the library to railroad days to
botanical gardens to everything.
We need to get on the same page before spring. And I think that will be a good push toward unifying this. And if it takes raising the sales tax in increment to do it, maybe people will be okay with that.
If it's okay, I'd like to assist with developing some of the survey and the facilitation models, if that's okay.
Yeah.
This is my wheelhouse. I'm really excited to see what this. I can help.
I do have a motion. So that we don't lose momentum, my motion would be for the city manager to present a plan at our next meeting for the visioning workshops, which I hope will be facilitated, and the 2020, 2021, 2022 budget cycle with the notion we don't have that many months left before we're to adopt our next budget. And all of the heavy lifting around water rates and sewer rates and solid waste rates, we've done that.
Yeah, we have.
So now we can focus more on the general fund and what we want to do, not what we have to do. But we need a schedule, we need to drive ourselves to get this done.
So with the 2020 budget, are you asking that staff begin drafting that?
Well, I have yet to see.
You started off making a motion, Pete.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe.
So it's both workshops for visioning on whatever 3 years, 5 years, I defer to the planners with facilitation, but for the budget, we're about to go into January. We have really 5 months before we're ready to adopt our next budget. Our next budget should be informed by the sales tax, the cannabis revenues, the community promotion funding, instead of just, we're going to do it, no, we can't afford it, we need a plan.
So just to clarify, so I don't think you answered Councilmember Kaiser's question, but so I believe that, I believe the motion on the floor, and you can correct me if you caught something else. I believe the motion on the floor is to direct staff to prepare a draft schedule for our consideration on when we would have these workshops. And then to also begin preparing the 2-year budget draft. Would you like to refer that to the finance committee first?
Once we have it, yeah, it has to be projected rather than 12 months at a time.
Correct, okay. So is that enough direction for that?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
With the amendment between what you said and what he said 3 to 5 years, you said 2 years. I'll second a 2 to 3 year. 5 years just ain't working, because everything keeps changing, time we get to it.
It's kind of the difference between budget and visioning.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, and my example is this,
Am I saying,
for the airport, you're gonna have to look out a number of years to figure out what makes that piece of property financially viable. And we need to engage the citizens on that.
okay,
So, the city manager said budget 2 years forward is enough.
okay.
I'm good with that.
I second the motion.
Stereo, we both did.
So motion by Councilmember R, seconded by, I'll give it to Councilmember Bryan.
Yeah.
So is there any other discussion on the motion at hand? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of moving forward by directing staff to prepare a draft schedule for the workshops and to begin preparing a 2-year projected budget for finance committee consideration, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Before I vote, I will have to say, I'm excited about this.
We're gonna do
Aye.
And that's unanimous ayes, thank you.
Well, rest on the subject.
Come here, can we give ourselves a hand? Well, we ain't done it yet, but we're on the right track.
I'm gonna go Councilmember Bryan and then Councilmember Deutsch.
While we're on the subject of budget and visioning workshops, just a real quick question. When does the audit for our prior fiscal year begin? Is it already in work?
The auditor, yeah, the auditor was gonna be here last week, 2 weeks ago or something like that, but he had to postpone. It was during snow again, cycle, and so.
Okay, good work. And then
He's coming in January.
related to that, when would you be ready to do a, like after your budget review, like for the finance committee?
Yeah, let's do that in January.
Okay.
Councilmember Deutsch.
Yes, ma'am, I just wanted to clarify, so do the two of you want to do the teaming up for?
I think, again, we're not all getting together and meeting. There's no reason why we can't each work on different aspects of this.
Okay, so you want to work the survey aspect of it? Then
Yeah,
Dave and
I
work
would,
the rest of it?
I would love to.
I'll
work
put
together.
you on the computer, let you do your thing there, you can tell everybody that you're with that way.
Okay, so the two of us will take the lead, and then if you want to work the survey aspect, that will be
I'm the
great.
door-to-door guy.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I can.
Look at the 3 musketeers.
And I can work with staff to get the right projections and stuff that we need. I think it'll probably be helpful to have Blake maybe do 1 or 2 of the initial presentations,
That'd be cool.
since,
Well, actually, wouldn't that also mean that, say, Matthew would be working at the same time as the 2-year budget plan was coming together?
This would all be,
it's probably all
it's a
very.
general fund budget, so it's all interrelated. But I do think if we could potentially have staff, city manager and finance director maybe do the budget portion, explain the factual situation, and then maybe the visioning conversation maybe be led by the councilors or something.
The city manager can't, but.
No, he fully can. He's the most qualified to talk about the city budget.
Oh, he was talking about visioning.
He can't.
He can't make the vision.
In terms of government support.
For a particular direction or another.
Okay,
Yeah,
But in terms of,
but you can lead the show.
yeah,
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
yeah, and Julie on it, I think preparing the survey instrument, we work together, I think would be great. I know you've done some survey work, I have as well, and I think we can put together something pretty good.
Okay, great. Anything else on this item? Seeing none, we'll move into old business. So item 11A is the transient occupancy tax discussion.
Okay, so at the last council meeting, we talked about a potential TOT increase, and the only person that we had here representing the community that this would impact was Mark Raleigh from the Mossbury Hotel, who was talking about a 3%, well, first it was a 2% TOT tax increase, and he suggested 3. We have heard from other folks that will also be impacted, that they don't want to see an increase beyond where Mount Shasta's rates are. Ultimately, this discussion is going to be put off. One of the things that found out is in our ordinance, it said that council could pass a TOT increase. That is not the case. It is also increasing TOT taxes, which makes complete sense, is governed by Proposition 218, which means this is put off until the November election as well. So we have time to talk to the people that this will impact and figure out whether a TOT increase is viable or not.
Any questions before we go to public comment?
Well, just, I guess it was our ordinance that was misleading us.
Yes.
We should maybe change that.
We have so much cleaning up to do, it's embarrassing.
So,
There's a quick question relative to when we adopted, and this could just be, I haven't read all the way through Prop 218, but when we adopted the sewer increase as an example, it was a negative ballot, and we did adopt that by ordinance. Or not ordinance, but council adopted that plan. We had that opportunity. Maybe if we use some, unless you know it already, clarification as to why that doesn't apply in this situation.
Again, 218 refers to specifically tax measures on the ballot, and I don't know what rate increases, how that falls under that, but I will discuss with council and have an answer for you.
Just with
The basic summary is Prop 218, 218 is kind of the over-encompassing how cities can set fees and set taxes, so it's the overarching, basically it's like the government code, it contains a lot of different things. And so for 218, for taxes, you don't have to base how much you're charging a tax on a service you're getting. So that's the difference, is so with like utilities, we cannot charge more than what it takes to provide that service.
Right.
Or provide money for improvements to that service. And that's why we can only apply those rates to the individuals paying it. So they both fall under Prop 218, but that's why it's a negative ballot as opposed to a ballot that has to go on, a ballot measure that has to go on to the taxes.
Because it's revenue neutral.
Yes, yeah. So all in the same family, but slightly different based off of the services we're getting.
One step out, the rest.
But then that would mean that what we have to do for that is not to go to an election, but to put out to all the people who have property, and we have to ask them whether or not they want to protest. That's the 218 process, right?
I see how one's a tax, one's a rate. It is different. I didn't see that from the beginning. I was just clarifying because we've had a lot of misinformation relative to laws governing tax increase lately. So I would just love to, move forward with the clear picture.
And then there's there's another third section, which is property assessments, which is a whole other thing that does have some regulations in 218 as well. So again, it's really just, it's the 218 is the over-encompassing like financial measure. And so there's different pieces and different things you can charge for other stuff. So property assessments are another way of doing it.
how do we change it? How do we make it a tax for law enforcement, code enforcement? How can I can convince Dunsmuir, because they want law enforcement, they want code enforcement, they want a dog catcher.
You're talking about TUT, we're talking TOT now.
I'm talking about getting money for the city.
I think he's talking overall.
I'm like, no, overall.
Yeah.
I can't convince these people to raise these hotel taxes, and they're not happy. The hotel owners aren't. You got 1 out of 5. So, but let's put it this way. Okay, we make a tax for law enforcement. That's strictly dedicated for law enforcement. Law enforcement, code enforcement, dog catcher. Or, at the end of the year, we take out 476, $500,000 comes out of the general fund. Now I have to pay for the code enforcement, law enforcement, dog catcher. Well, we don't got that anyway.
Well, as we discussed.
But if we pass the tax, I got almost $500,000. That stays in our general fund. Oh, the resource needs some money? We can afford to do that. The pool needs a new liner? Hey, we can afford to do that. And so on and so on. The money's still kept like in-house. I'm not throwing it out there for the sheriffs.
So the one way we can do it, we learned this at the conference. You can do it, period. The council can decide to put it on there, but it needs a 2/3 threshold, so 66 plus 1, 5%, and then, or 67%, I guess. The other way to do it with 50% threshold would be if citizens come forth. But I was just wondering if, so if we collected enough signatures, this wouldn't be us as council, but if the citizens or citizens group collected enough signatures, they could by referendum put a dedicated tax, is our understanding, on the November ballot.
Well, can I answer this? It's pretty simple.
Come on!
So, part of the survey process, I know I'm speaking loud enough, I mean, come on, all right? Is that when we're doing the survey work, we already have an idea of what's going to sell, and that's, it is law enforcement. That's what we think is going to sell. Now, what we'll find out when we do this survey work is what else rises to the top. My gut feeling is it's going to be law enforcement. So what do we lead with when we're looking for a TUT tax increase? We're looking to put law enforcement and making sure we've got a dedicated source for law enforcement on that ballot for a TUT increase. And what does that do? It allows us to free up some general fund money that otherwise we'd be spending on law enforcement. It's really easy to do. I mean, you can open up and promote a special tax, but you need a 2/3 vote to say that that's going to be dedicated specifically to law enforcement, when you can get the same thing by just doing your homework and your work with the public and going to the November ballot.
Yeah, could you ask John, when you get a chance, what the actual legal threshold of signatures is for a referendum in Dunsmuir?
It's 2/3.
2/3 of the signature? No.
2/3 of the voting?
2/3 of the population have to vote if it's a special tax.
Oh, what he's asking
No,
is
it's
how
not about the
many
signatures.
Yeah, this is
to get
different.
the ballot on.
50%, not 2/3, 50% is if it is a citizen's referendum.
No, the difference, 50% and 66% is whether it's special or not.
No, that is
Back in
how it worked beforehand. There is a way to have 50% a dedicated tax, but not with council placing it on the ballot.
So I've had this discussion with John. I forget the exact figure. It's around 700 signatures, but I'll need to check with him again.
Well, he told me 10% of the last gubernatorial election actual voters, which would be like 50-some signatures.
It's higher. I'll check with
But if we
John.
could get an exact number to help guide us with.
But I don't know what that buys us, that taking an easier road will net the same result.
So I think, again, we're delving into what we just talked about, which is the budget workshops that we're going to be doing.
Yes.
We'll have a lot more information, and we can get that information there. Is there any other questions about the transient occupancy tax before I move into public comment? Just kind of delved into discussion a bit.
Yeah, sort of.
Would anyone like to give public comment on the TOT discussion?
So I do have a question. If there is a signature thing that would make it easier, that's something that I know I would even be interested in helping
We'll
to
talk.
gain signatures.
So just to cover through the microphone, so that there was public comment about getting signatures and wanting to know what that number is. So, cool. So we'll move back into council discussion. Did you expect any action on this item, or was it just an update? I have a feeling what we have basically take our input for the budget workshops. Does anyone else have any other discussion? Councilor Bryan?
Real quick, we were very happy about what these numbers look like in discussing our general fund situation. Do you guys have a projection of how much worse it looks with that being off the table? And this relates to the very next one.
TOT.
Yeah, not being able to factor that in until after another election. Or
35% less this year, or 35,000 less this year, approximately.
yeah, and then the next year's budget, which is big concern. A lot less, so.
It all depends on what we collect in TOT and then projecting that out if we had a 2% increase or 3% increase.
So I'm gonna go over here, Councilmember Arth had his hand up first, and then we'll come back to you.
Two things. And both things are in the context. All of us took Economics 101, and for a competitive industry like the lodging industry, everybody seeks a level playing field as they're competing for lodging customers. So since our last meeting, I had about a 1-hour phone call with the owner of the Dunsmuir Lodge. I didn't call him, he called me in opposition to the transit occupancy tax increase. And in our conversation, there were two factoids that were news to me. One is, he said, my guests already pay 12%. They pay 10% plus 2% to the funding of Discover Siskiyou. I said, I did not know that. So he said, you're placing me at an even greater competitive disadvantage by talking about increases.
Well, can we hold on to that, because every other city that has TOT is actually facing the same thing. So we're on a level playing field.
Number two is, I said, did you know that out of the City of Dunsmuir's general fund, we're paying $6,000 a year to Discover Siskiyou to promote our city in the lodging industry? He said no.
Well, actually, the $6,000 we pay for is for the Siskiyou County Economic Development Council, which is different from Discover Siskiyou.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
We both agreed.
Theoretically different.
Theoretically, same manager, but
We both agreed for the dollars being paid by the City of Dunsmuir, the lodging industry, and the base of taxpayers, we desperately need to have this conversation as between Mark Rowley and Louis Dewey and the gentleman that owns the Dunsmuir Inn and Suites. And he said it only gets worse if you're outside the City of Dunsmuir. I compete with lodging that doesn't pay either of these. You gotta listen to me, and I think we do.
what was he referencing when he was referencing lodging that doesn't pay any TOT tax?
Outside the jurisdiction of the City of Dunsmuir. And he said, I'm not comfortable coming to the city council and talking to big groups, but this is very important to me, and I'm happy to participate in a smaller group setting. And I said, we'll try to make that happen. The other point is, every licensed lodging operator in the City of Dunsmuir is hyper aware of the competition offered by VBRO, Airbnb, etc., and so on. I think before we consider further taxation of the base that's following the rules, the city, like every other city in Siskiyou County in California, needs to make sure all of these competitors are registered and paying.
I think just a really quick point of information, if you do happen to talk to him next, or if he runs into any of us, if you are in Siskiyou County also has a TOT tax, and Siskiyou County Lodging also has the TBID. So Siskiyou County, I think, is at 10% as well, plus the 2% for TBID. So I believe that every jurisdiction is on, at least in Siskiyou County. I know we're very close to Shasta, and I don't know what Shasta County's rate is, but I believe that
It's 10% plus 2% for the TBID.
Everybody's
for Shasta County.
Yes, and they're looking at, then down Shasta City and the county are looking at an increase. They haven't announced it.
Yeah, so I mean, the next time we talk to him, everyone does pay it. And then also for the short-term rentals, the vacation rentals do also pay TOT. I'm not sure, do you guys know if they did pay the TBID?
I can talk to him. I know the right one is TBID.
What?
Everybody pays TBID.
Okay, so short-term rentals, if they are registered, they
Well,
can
everybody in the city knows about it. He pays TBID.
Yeah. That's
And again, if they are operating, they're doing so illegally and also evading paying their taxes, which is a pretty hefty.
Yes,
So-
well, that's a huge advantage,
Well,
as we head up over 10%.
Well, and I think another point to discuss with the people invested in this is that the way to avoid this is to have our code enforcement officer get through the backlog and be able to process. It's a low priority for us, but it's important. And we need to be able to fund an officer that does that, and that will benefit them.
I'm going to refer to city staff. Ronnie, did you want to?
Just to clarify for my notes, this was Dunsmuir Lodge down this way, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're in the county. They are not in the city limits.
Okay, so let me ask you a
So
question, do
I'm
they pay us
confused,
taxes?
are they saying they're paying 12%?
Yes.
So that's the county's tax?
That's right, they're not.
All he impressed me was, you don't know what you're talking about, Councilmember Ardith, and I said, you're right.
Well, and another point, I don't know if everyone received it, but I at least received an email from the owner of the Dunsmuir Suites, which
Yes.
is in our city.
I got phone calls from all of them.
Yeah.
They weren't an hour long, but they were concerned,
Yeah.
and they were not happy.
Well, you could ask the Dunsmuir Lodge owner next time, Peter, if you'd like to go in the city.
Yeah, you should.
We might have lower rates someday.
And, you know, this is part of the chamber discussion. In every city I've ever been in, the lodging industry has a voice as part of their chamber of commerce. We don't.
Yeah, no comment.
For the record, Airbnb pays TOT taxes. We don't have to know where they are in the city limits. If they're in the city limits, they pay taxes automatically to the city.
That's the only one.
Airbnb.
That's the only
Yeah,
one.
but there's private people that aren't.
Yeah. So I think,
Private people do pay.
Yeah.
We do get lots of private VRBOs, even they're on their own Craigslist website or something, that are registered. And all people that are short-term occupancy vendors or people out there need to register with the city and pay a TOT tax. If they don't do that, they are in violation, and that is not appropriate. So if there are people out there that are doing that, please register with the city.
And so the next step in line is that those that are not in compliance theoretically will be visited by code enforcement.
All right, great. Any other discussion, Councilmember Deutsch?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that as far as the TOT is concerned, I did also receive that letter from Dunsmuir and Suites, and at the same time I wanted to notice that I've also received positive inputs for raising it from, I know Lori Barnes Harley was particularly, she put a post up there and several people came out in favor of it. So I just want to point out that as we go forward and take information, that that'll be an opportunity to give them their voice that I know they're looking for and deserve.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other discussion, we'll move on to our next item, which is 11B, sale of city-owned parcel.
I move we sell it.
We're gonna, we have to have public comment first.
So there is an 11.6 acre parcel owned by the city that is in the county, South Dunsmuir. It is not the most usable piece of land. We have a wild guesstimate on what it's worth. There were 2 comps on properties that sold in the last year that were about half the size of this, that one sold for $35,000, one sold for $50,000. And the estimate, not exactly pinpoint accuracy, but under 100,000 is what they say. So I think it's worth quite a bit less, but the idea of selling this is to cover the shortfall in what we were hoping to get from passing TOT at City Council.
Great. Any questions before I move into public comment?
Let's just clarify, the Bent Rail Park, this is a piece of property that is to the south of Manfredi's, right?
Yes.
It has been nothing but a hindrance and a liability to the city since the Scooby days. So if we could sell it for that amount of money, and we don't, we need psychiatrists, because that would be a dumb move. We need to sell it.
Councilmember Bryan, you had a question?
Yeah, have you personally assessed this parcel and seen it?
Yes, I've actually walked the site.
Okay, cool. What was your take on its viability? Because the 65,000, the higher end one, I'm assuming that's the lot that sold for 65,000 here right in the center of town, which, although unfinished, is near a great many facilities, very improved in its general location, flat.
I don't know what the comps were. The comps were from the Realtor were comps that were consistent with what properties that were selling.
Yeah, comps in our area are a nightmare because we have such different types of properties. We're lucky to even have. Since in the last 4 years, I think there's only been 5 parcels, or no, less than that. There's very few pieces of land that sell here in Dunsmuir.
Yeah.
A lot are on the market, very few sell. So I was just wondering, maybe you just let us know what you think its value would be, not in dollars, but in terms of usage. Like what are the potential uses that someone could realistically try to do with this?
You could clear the trees off the site with, doing environmental first, and you could.
Saleable timber on that thing? I don't think there is.
Potentially, but there also, it is not marked as having wetlands, but there is a creek running through it.
Is it river frontage?
No.
Is that tributary creek?
But what's listed in the comps is that the 2 comparable properties, and I didn't get information on the addresses, is that both are unimproved, so they have no services.
The other thing on this property is that there's limited right-of-way, right? There's no real access to the property.
Correct.
You have to cross over existing right-of-ways.
Is this in Shasta County? Or Siskiyou?
It's next to Shasta, but it's our property.
It's in Siskiyou.
It's like right on the border.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the border.
Any other questions before I open up for public comment real quick?
Just one, if we voted yes, would the city list it with a broker? How would they sell it?
We could probably get input on that once we get to discussion.
That takes some thought. We save a lot of money if we list it, but let me chew on that one. But either way, we're going to net something that's going to help us cover our hole. I would prefer to list it if we have the capability.
All right, I'm going to open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to come up. Seeing none. Seeing none. I'll move back into discussion.
I make a motion that we sell it. I think maybe somebody can do something great with it.
Seconded.
This is the one consideration.
Yeah.
If we could reach out personally to Mr. Benson and see if he might consider a land swap, that might be more.
A land swap.
You don't want it.
A split parcel to give us that whole section of Children's Park.
It's got Caltrans, the Caltrans can tell you what to do with some of that property.
Well, it doesn't hurt to contact.
He may want, I mean, this could perhaps, my guess is its highest and best use would be a little unimproved cabin out there in the woods.
I will quote Wayne Gretzky, the great Wayne Gretzky, that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So I'll ask you.
So there was a motion to move forward with selling the property in a second. Is there any discussion on that motion, Councilmember Hart?
Well, the vice mayor took my point A, point A and B, which is yes, you could obviously finesse the transaction costs with the notion Gary Benson, I think it's inappropriate for him to have his roofing operation in the middle of downtown. For a while, the city was dangling the car barn on Union Pacific property, and that has come and gone. So this may actually work. Point B is, just as my own sense of economic justice is, whatever dollars we get from selling this capital asset should go into a capital improvement fund rather than offsetting the general fund. I'd be willing to hear from our auditor, but for all the things we're going to try to do in the years ahead, I would rather have the dollars reserved. And again, in our budget from last year, the staff has promised us a capital improvement budget, and I've not seen that yet.
I don't believe you're allowed to earmark funds that are not special funds, but I think that's a question for John Kenny. Please, just to clarify that. One of the other things I was going to request was if, again, you're going to be contacting Benson, if that doesn't work out, I would recommend contacting the neighboring lots. If it is kind of landlocked and difficult, there may be an ability to see if the neighbors want to extend their lots and just cannibalize that guy into whatever multi-unit lots. That would be very easy to just do a couple of boundary line adjustments. And then that way you're selling pieces of it to the neighboring properties that already exist. Yeah, especially if it's landlocked, it's really difficult to sell those off. They're not necessarily there. But anyway, so there's a motion on the table to move forward with selling. Any other discussion?
Then, do we know what the zoning is?
It's in the county.
It's commercial.
Oh, 3?
What's that?
4, is it 3 or 4?
I have to look. It's zone commercial, I just don't know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of moving forward, or, yeah, that is a roll call, thank you. All right, we'll do a roll call. All those in, the motion on the floor is to move forward with selling the lot. Councilmember Deutsch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Bryan?
Aye.
Councilmember Keisler?
Aye.
Councilmember Arth?
Aye.
And myself is an aye. That motion carries. Thank you.
We just did a unanimous thing.
Yeah. So we'll now move into item number 12, and I just want to circle back here real quick. There was a request, or at least a comment made by, I believe, Councilmember Deutsch, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, about possibly referring short-term rentals as a planning topic to Planning Commission.
But I think what I'd like to propose is that we bring it before the council to get a sense of what we're looking at, and then pass it on to the planning commission after that, but bring it on the agenda at some point.
Okay, yes, thank you. All right. I did not have a note about any other items. We are going to have a follow-up with the schedule for the budget and visioning workshops. Is there any other future agenda items that I missed?
Well, I think I'm covered, but let's check. Committee structure and
Yes.
occupants.
Committee structure?
Vacant building ordinance.
Yep, that'll come to us when the notice of the week is completed.
I would like at some point to have an agenda item on new grants from CDBG and EDGB with the notion our current budget document says we've got a history of bad loans, we've got depleted, we need to do something to reset to get these funds to help stimulate the economy in our community.
So I have a package for, I don't know if I should be naming names, for a delinquent economic development block grant loan to start legal action against the party. And I'm gathering information for another delinquent EDBJ loan recipient to do the same.
Well, and we do have a loan committee, just an ad hoc committee that just consists, I think, of myself for now, and we're trying to get a member of local bank manager on board with that, and keep that committee apprised. We just meet as needed. I appreciate that.
So it sounds like that will become an item in the future for us to discuss.
Yeah, there's several businesses in town, most of them working through JEDI, and they're of the belief that there are low-cost funds available for their expansion. And obviously, I want the city to be a leader with the county and so on.
So we have money that needs to be pulled into a current EDBG loan fund, and I've talked to the finance director, and we're looking to get that up and running as soon as possible in the new year. So we had that conversation with that.
Question? So I'm curious, so with both of those funds, the basic concept is that we're given a certain amount of money, and when that money comes back in, that money is something we could spend once the payments come in, is that right? And we could re-send out again, re-grant again?
Absolutely. And as the money goes out, it has to be collateralized, and some of the loans that have gone out that are delinquent haven't been
One in particular.
collateralized at all, but we have a paper trail of the fact that it went out and there was an agreement to pay, and there was an attempt at small restitution, but that stopped after about $5,000. And we have another grant or loan that's out that we get sporadic payments on, but it's been a long time since we've received any new payments, despite a number of letters seeking to collect or threatening legal action, and we've received no response. So we need to have a fair playing field in town, and we need to treat everybody the same. If you're delinquent, we are going to go after you.
So before we get into an actual item, it sounds like this will come back to us. This is not agendized, so I don't want to get into too much of those details. So we will see some information coming forward with that. Did you have anything else for future?
The last one was vision budget. Sounds like we're good.
All right, any other future agenda items?
Something was said, I would appreciate it if staff would look into this. Hypothetically, Pizza Factory wants to put a sign because they sponsor. Screw hypothetical. I'm retracting hypothetically. I'm making a statement. And I should have asked them when they was here. And you're right, our whole audience was Caltrans. Pizza Factory wants to put a sign, Pizza Factory, on the grandstands of the ball field. They were told they can't because Caltrans said no, or they have to pay. I want to know why. Why? When I grew up, we had signs from all the stores around my football field. So why can't we promote? Why can't stores advertise at the ball field?
So it sounds like this is something that...
I was asked to bring that up so you can look into it as to why.
Thank you, yeah. Doesn't sound like a...
Mom's away wants a space on Saturday.
See?
So I think we'll get some more information, and that might not even need to come to us. Maybe that's just something to clarify there and then move forward. Any other future agenda items? But thank you for that.
With long mask, I got, you know.
Any other future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move into adjournment. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, we are